My mother was the most beautiful woman in the world, and the emperor took a fancy to her and abducted her into the palace. I spent my days in tears, and the emperor, with a wave of his hand, sent the crown prince to comfort me. The prince, notorious for his cruelty, tried to console me for 3 days but failed. Frustrated, he asked me, "I possess the wealth of the entire realm, what do you want? I can give you anything." Sobbing, I replied, "I miss my mother." The prince gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, from today onward, I shall be your mother." A month later, I woke up in the crown prince's bedchamber to the sound of him throwing down a memorial and furiously shouting at the visitor, "What are you doing here?" I finally managed to coax her to sleep. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. My mother was the most beautiful woman in the world. She married young to a good man. But my father died early. Overwhelmed with grief, my mother took me away from the capital, that place of sorrow. 10 years later, when I reached marriageable age, she brought me back to the capital, asking my grandmother to arrange a good match for me. But never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that my mother would remarry before I did. That day she personally went to Metian Street to buy my favorite pastries, and by chance, the emperor, who was traveling incognito, fell in love with her at first sight. He persistently pursued her and even splurged to buy all the pastries on the entire street, successfully winning me over. The emperor was gentle, refined, and extraordinary in demeanor. Moreover, he shared a lot of common ground with my mother when it came to raising a child alone. In less than 3 months, my mother agreed to his courtship, but on the day of discussing marriage, we finally learned that he was the current emperor. My mother's expression immediately changed. She pulled out my father's dusty memorial tablet from the corner and resolutely declared that she would remain chaste for her deceased husband for the rest of her life. I immediately dropped the pastry in my hand and started throwing a tantrum, rolling on the ground while clutching my mother's leg, wailing, "Mom, how can I live without you? Take me with you." The emperor was utterly dumbfounded, unable to comprehend why I had sweetly called him Nu Deng just yesterday but was now referring to him as Dog Deng. But he never considered that if my mother married him, the rest of her life would be locked away in the unfathomably deep Forbidden City. Our family had always thought he was just an ordinary nouveau riche. Last night, my mother was still counting on her fingers how much gold he could drop for me after his death and whether it would be enough to assemble 8 dowry chests. But if the new dad turns out to be the emperor, surely he can't drop a throne for me, can he? All under heaven knew that the empress had passed away early, leaving behind only one crown prince. No matter how outstanding the other princes were, none could shake the crown prince's position. I didn't want to spend my entire life without seeing my mother again, nor did I want her to never again behold the scenery beyond the Forbidden City. No matter how many rare treasures flowed like water into my room, I refused to relent. After gold and silver failed to open the door, the Prime Minister himself came next with polite entreaties. Relatives and friends took turns persuading her, and even the most unruly crown prince was pressed by the emperor to visit and obediently call my mother Aunt Rong. The capital was abuzz with rumors that the emperor adored my mother beyond measure. But only I knew that her complexion grew paler by the day, and her expression ever more sorrowful. That day, she asked me to go play at my uncle's house. When I returned, I learned that she had been forcibly taken into the palace by the emperor and was immediately made a noble consort. I was so furious I could have gnashed my teeth to pieces. The damned emperor, perhaps out of guilt, then bestowed upon me the title of Princess Yushi, as if to show his affection, but during the coronation ceremony, my mother didn't give him the slightest bit of respect. She didn't say a single word to him and wore a sour expression the entire time. Anyone who didn't know better might have thought she'd lost her husband again. I had just locked eyes with my mother when I burst into tears, crying with rhythm, crying with melody, crying with style. The musicians blew their swanas so hard they nearly burst their lungs, yet they couldn't drown out my thumping, rhythmic sobs. The emperor was so awkward he didn't know where to put his hands. He suddenly shoved the crown prince. "You, look how happy your sister is. She's crying, go comfort her, quick." The crown prince shot his father an incredulous look, his face screaming, "Please, just act like a decent human being." But from birth till now, he'd never done a single comforting deed in his life. He stood stiffly beside me, his brows furrowed so tightly they could crush a fly. After a long while, I heard him say coldly, "Stop crying." I sniffled, "I'm sad." Him, "Don't be sad. I really want to die, don't die. I was stunned by the Crown Prince's ability to comfort people. With teary eyes, I looked up at him. Is that the best you can do? The Crown Prince was provoked by me. Then what will make you stop crying? I said. I'll kill your father. I quickly corrected myself, or give me a broad shoulder to lean on. The Crown Prince's furrowed brows relaxed again as he raised his hand to offer me a handkerchief. Like lightning, I grabbed his sleeve and vigorously wiped my nose on it. The Crown Prince let out a sharp scream, and I patted his shoulder as I walked away. Don't be sad. As soon as I stepped out of the Forbidden City, my tears began to flow like the waters of the Yellow River descending from the heavens, surging to the sea never to return. I made sure all the civil and military officials, as well as the common people in the city, could see how the despicable emperor had hurt this fragile little girl. The emperor, unable to enter the imperial consort's chambers for 3 days after his wedding and nearly drowned in the officials' scorn during the morning court, finally couldn't take it anymore. With a grand gesture, he sent the Crown Prince to console me. Today, the Crown Prince wasn't wearing his usual loose robes but rather tight-fitting archer's sleeves. If it weren't for the fear of being impeached by the censors, he might not even want to wear the arrow sleeves, just a short-sleeved shirt with his arms slathered in chile oil. As soon as he arrived, he started negotiating with me. Tang Xiaoxi, I understand how you feel. I cut him off. Understand my ass. It's not your dad who remarried. You even gained an extra mom. How wonderful for you. The Crown Prince's face turned livid. Then what exactly do you want? I began to well up with tears. I want to see my mother every day. The Crown Prince sighed in relief. His Majesty has granted you the title of princess, so you can enter the palace to accompany your mother until the day of your marriage. I flew into a rage. Then wouldn't I also be imprisoned in the Forbidden City? I want freedom. Then you can live in the princess's residence outside the palace. I want to see my mother every day. This dialogue repeated 3 or 4 times. And the Crown Prince, infuriated by the broken record, took a deep breath, stood up to perform a set of military boxing, and then sat back down. He threatened and coaxed. While I wailed loudly, he tried to persuade me with kind words. While I wept like a pear blossom bathed in rain, the Crown Prince talked until his mouth was parched, exhausted to the point of looking pale and listless, while I only grew more spirited the more I cried. Finally, he broke down and asked me. I possess the wealth of the entire realm. What do you want? I can give you anything. I sighed and pointed at the night sky. Your Highness, look, the stars in the sky don't speak a word. Choking back tears, I said, the little stream on the ground misses its mother. The Crown Prince fell silent, especially when I asked him, Your Highness, don't you miss your mother? Finally, he broke down, and we cried together in each other's arms. Gazing at the prince's pained and vulnerable expression, I silently swallowed back the words, Sorry, I forgot you don't have a mother. After crying, the Crown Prince gritted his teeth and said, Stop crying. From today onward, I shall be your mother. I was stunned. Had Helian Yu abandoned the path of kingship to embrace motherhood, deciding to rule the world with maternal grace? On a quiet night, I lay stiffly on the bed, listening to Helian Yu recite the Tao Te Ching to me. All because I carelessly mentioned, when I was little, my mother would tell me stories to help me sleep every night. Helian Yu's eyes lit up as he dug out his old books, but after just a few lines, my eyelids began to grow heavy. Helian Yu was probably a first-time mother with no experience. As she read, she occasionally quizzed me, Hold fast to the great image, and all the world will come, coming without harm. They will find peace and security. What does this mean? I opened my clear but foolishly innocent eyes wide and answered, Hug an elephant and travel the world. If you're not afraid, the world will be at peace. Helian Yu gasped sharply, I underestimated you. She then flipped a few pages abruptly and pointed to the line, When the world has the way, warhorses are retired to till the fields. When the world lacks the way, warhorses are bred in the suburbs. She asked, What about this one? I was so drowsy I could barely see the words. Answering in a daze, There is a path, but it's filled with horse dung. Where there is no path, the warhorses are bred in the wilderness. Helian Yu was so shocked he didn't even notice the book slipping from his hand, murmuring to himself, Good heavens, could she truly be an imbecile? I had already closed my eyes and drifted peacefully into sleep when Helian Yu suddenly slammed the table, startling me awake, agitated beyond measure. He couldn't sit still and paced back and forth in the room before rushing over to shake me. Stop sleeping. How can someone your age sleep so soundly? First recite the Tao Te Ching from memory, Then I'll explain its meaning to you. Helian Yu, you're truly the death of me. Let's see who can outlast whom, shall we? After keeping me up half the night reading, Helian Yu finally remembered his task for the evening was to lull me to sleep. Sheepishly, he asked, Tang Xiaoxi. Which book did your mother use to tell you stories? I perked up immediately, pulling out a copy of The Chaste Widow and the Handsome Scholar from under my pillow and thrusting it into Helian Yu's hands. Helian Yu's entire body stiffened, holding the book as if it were a hot potato. This, how utterly improper, I said impatiently. Read it quickly, my mother always reads to me. Helian Yu had no choice but to stammer through the text, sweating profusely from the content. This time our roles were reversed. I closed my eyes but felt invigorated, while Helian Yu's voice grew softer and softer as he yawned from exhaustion. Perhaps thinking I had fallen asleep when I closed my eyes, Helian Yu had just stood up to leave when I suddenly opened my eyes and asked, Why did you stop reading? Helian Yu was so startled his soul nearly left his body, and he had no choice but to sit back down. The weak, mechanical sound of reading resumed once more. The next morning, a bleary-eyed Helian Yu struggled to get up for the morning court session. Facing the questioning from the eunuch in charge of the imperial seal, Helian Yu instinctively said, This servant, bah, I suffered from insomnia last night. Hence I woke up a bit late. Shall this servant go wake up Princess Yushi? Even through the palace doors, I could hear Helian Yu's roar. Are you out of your mind? I finally managed to get her to sleep. Pass down the order. Whoever dares to wake Princess Yushi, I'll exterminate their 9 generations. I yawned, turned over, and went back to sleep. Helian Yu returned from the morning court session to find me still deep in slumber, dreaming of the Duke of Zhou. It wasn't until a eunuch rushed into the bedchamber to announce, Your Highness, Miss Yi requests an audience, that I was jolted awake. Startled, my first instinct was to look for my mother. Helian Yu was quietly reviewing memorials at the nearby desk. The moment our eyes met, I saw the terror of a night spent taming falcons reflected in his gaze. With a sharp snap, Helian Yu broke the brush in his hand. Unauthorized intrusion. Drag her out and behead her. I immediately sat up. Don't. My mother is very gentle. She wouldn't even dare to kill a chicken. Helian Yu hesitated for a moment before saying, But I have already killed his chicken. It took me a while to process what he meant, and I said with difficulty, I'm still a child. I don't understand what you're talking about. Helian Yu's gaze fell on another book under my pillow, titled The Domineering Empress and Her Runaway Husband. I quickly put on my clothes and got up, urging him, Didn't you say a Missy was looking for you? Don't keep her waiting. After all, I was quite curious. The reputation of Helian Yu's cruelty was well known to everyone in the capital, so why would any girl actively seek him out? Standing in front of the hall was a graceful young woman. When she saw Helian Yu personally come out to greet her, her face lit up with joy, until she noticed me trailing behind him like a chick following its mother hen. Instantly, her smile froze. Your Highness, who is she? Who's she? Helian Yu replied. She is Yin Lang, daughter of Grand Tutor Yi, the future crown princess chosen for me by His Majesty. Yin Lang, this is Princess Yushi, personally ennobled by His Majesty. You can treat her as your own niece. Then he gave me a gentle push. I felt a shove at my back and involuntarily took 2 steps forward, instinctively blurting out, Hello, Aunt Yi. Yin Lang's expression shifted several times, visibly shocked by our messy relationship. In utter confusion, she said, Xiaoxi has grown so tall. I even held you when you were little, as far as I know. Grand Tutor Ye's daughter is only a year older than me. We played together as children. If held me refers to wrestling, then yes, she certainly did hold me. It's been 10 years since we last met. I never expected our generational titles would change. Helian Yu asked, What brings you to seek an audience with this prince? Yin Lang snapped back to attention. Tomorrow my family is hosting a flower viewing banquet. I hope your highness will honor us with your presence. Helian Yu's expression visibly relaxed. This prince has no time. Take Xiaoxi to enjoy herself, but keep an eye on her. Don't let her eat any of those messy snacks. Yin Lang twitched the corner of her mouth, as if wanting to say, Do you think my house is a daycare center? But held back. After she left, I fell into deep thought. I remember when Yin Lang was a child, she was the neighborhood bully, her arms thicker than my thighs, with a fiery temper and wild behavior. She even stole my entire year's supply of dried fish snacks. If she were to become the crown princess, would I ever have a peaceful day again? At this thought, I grabbed Helian Yu's sleeve, trembling. After she marries you, she won't mistreat me, will she? Helian Yu was stunned and fell into deep thought. On this day, nearly all the noble ladies of the capital attended the Yi family's flower-viewing banquet. In their eyes, I was merely a pitiable girl who owed her status to her mother. Only securing a seat due to my childhood friendship with Yin Lang, birds of a feather flocked together. In front of me was a small table covered with various kinds of dried fish. While they were indulging in romantic fantasies over there, I was here savoring every bite with great relish. The aroma wafted over to the noble ladies. Lin Miao, the daughter of the Minister of Revenue, was gracefully critiquing a peony. This dark orchid is gorgeous without being vulgar. Its fragrance is subtle and elegant, with a hint of, why does it smell like fish? Damn it, what is that delicious smell? She swallowed hard, glanced around, and finally her gaze landed on me. For a moment, everyone's gaze turned toward me. I looked up blankly, my hand holding the dried fish frozen mid-air, unsure whether to eat it or put it down. Do you want some? Lin Miao laughed in exasperation. Princess Yushi truly behaves with such crude manners, utterly lacking in etiquette. This flower appreciation banquet is such an elegant occasion, yet here you are feasting heartily. Isn't this like a cow chewing on peonies? Another noble lady from a different ducal household crossed her arms and sneered. Truly a wild girl from the countryside. Does the imperial consort think that once on the dragon bed, there's no need to teach her daughter manners anymore? I stared at them blankly, then clenched my back teeth, snapping the dried fish in my mouth clean in half. Thinking I was frozen in fear, one of them swayed gracefully toward me with a small pot of peonies and chuckled. Your Highness Yushi, do you know what this is? I doubt you'd recognize it. It's the priceless jade hibiscus. Before she could finish, I pounced like a tiger on its prey, biting the flower to shreds in one gulp. The girl was so startled she dropped the pot in fright. Lin Miao screamed, "Are you insane? This jade hibiscus cost me 1,000 taels of silver." She rushed forward to slap me, but I stuffed a stiff dried fish into her mouth. My childhood experience of frequent beatings under Yin Lang's hands allowed me to quickly knock her down. Within seconds, bodies littered the ground. When Yin Lang returned, she could hardly believe this was her exquisitely decorated back garden. She asked darkly, "What happened here?" We all lowered our heads, not daring to look at her. I weakly explained, "Believe me, there was just a tornado." The others nodded vigorously. Yin Lang clenched her fists. "Where are the flowers? I made a last-ditch defense. Eaten by fish. Where's the fish? I ate it." Tang Xiaoxi, do you take me for a fool? Seeing that the truth was out, I pointed at the disheveled Lin Miao. It was all her idea. She made me chew on peonies. Lin Miao was nearly driven mad. What I clearly said was a bull chewing peonies. Who told you to actually chew peonies? Just answer me. Did you say those 3 words or not? As Yin Lang's face grew darker and she advanced step by step toward me, in that moment, humanity finally remembered the fear of being dominated by her once again. I closed my eyes and screamed at the top of my lungs. "Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong?" Helian Yu appeared on the corridor as if teleporting. Helian Yu narrowed his phoenix eyes, his gaze sweeping over the chaotic back garden, the disheveled noble ladies, and my aggrieved expression. The little braid Helian Yu tied for me before going out was now a tangled mess, my cheeks smeared with mud, and my whole body covered in disheveled petals, enough to make any mother's blood pressure spike. Helian Yu's face looked more terrifying than a ghost. It was the first time I'd seen him angry, and I finally understood why those officials feared him like a tiger. He stared at Yin Lang, his eyes dark and cold, and said sharply, "Miss Yi. My Xiaoxi was perfectly fine when she left this morning. Why is she now covered in mud with a cut on her neck? Is this how you look after a child?" I touched my neck and only then realized I'd accidentally been nicked by a rose thorn during the earlier scuffle. Yin Lang felt guilty and short of breath under the questioning, awkwardly explaining, "Your Highness, the Crown Prince, our Yi family's back garden is tended to by gardeners every week. But it's impossible to completely remove all the thorns. Getting scratched by a thorn is quite normal." Helian Yu frowned. "Then why hasn't anyone else been scratched?" "Perhaps because they didn't charge headfirst into the rose bushes like I did." If Helian Yu were to turn Lin Miao over, he would see her backside covered in thorns. Lin Miao retorted indignantly, "Your Highness, why must you make such a big fuss over this? Haven't you ever been scratched by a thorn in your own back garden?" Helian Yu grew even angrier. "It didn't stab you, so of course you wouldn't feel heartbroken." Lin Miao truly wouldn't feel heartbroken. because it was her but that got stabbed, her but was the one hurting. Yin Lang wanted to explain a few words, but the moment she opened her mouth, Yu cut her off. Miss Yi, from now on, my child won't be participating in this activity anymore. Our Xiaoxi used to be especially cheerful, but now she's just sitting there motionless and ignoring everyone. Upon closer look, she's actually crying. Hearing these words, I immediately froze. The dried fish I had been quietly nibbling on halfway stuck in my throat, making me so uncomfortable that tears welled up in my eyes. I nodded with a choked sob. Clearly, you're targeting our Xiaoxi, aren't you? Just because she didn't want to play with you when she was little. How could our child be wronged just by attending a flower viewing banquet? Damn it. I'll have your entire clan arrested. Yu grew angrier as he spoke, and I quickly pulled him back. Enough, your highness, that's a bit extreme. Even after we returned, he kept grumbling. Yin Lang usually seems quite reliable, but who knew she couldn't even handle such a small matter properly? How could I let someone like her become the crown princess? Don't play with this kind of person anymore. Such suffocating maternal love. I can't breathe. I asked you to be my mother, not to outdo my own mother. At first, I just wanted an excuse to move into the palace, so I casually helped Yu fulfill his dream of becoming a male mother. I even thought, how outrageous could Yu possibly be? But I never expected him to be so outrageous that he'd knit sweaters during court sessions. Everyone in the palace was nearly driven mad by Yu. Apart from me, the emperor bore the brunt of it. One day, he discovered his dragon robe had been stolen and, suspecting the crown prince of plotting to usurp the throne, dared not make a fuss. The next morning, the robe was returned perfectly intact, except it now had 8 extra pockets. Yu proudly declared that he had sewn them stitch by stitch himself, the left pockets for treasury keys, the right ones for the imperial seal and military tokens, and the sleeve pockets for concealing daggers. A masterpiece of both offense and defense, a stroke of genius. The emperor was nearly driven mad, as he had to attend the morning court wearing a dragon robe with 8 pockets. Midway through the session, one of the pockets suddenly tore open, and a live crucian carp fell out, bouncing all the way from the jade steps to the entrance of the Palace of Heavenly Purity. Yu explained that he couldn't find an apron while cooking the previous night, so he wore the dragon robe instead and absent-mindedly stuffed the fish into a pocket, forgetting to take it out. Now he remembered, there were also 2 loaches in another pocket on the right side. The emperor's eyes nearly popped out of his head as he clutched his chest, gasping for breath. He frantically searched all 8 pockets but couldn't find the calming medicine that could save his sanity. The entire court abandoned the morning session, spending the whole morning in a chaotic scramble to catch the fish. The emperor was furious and demoted Yu to the study hall to relearn how to be a crown prince. Not long after, the elderly tutor tearfully complained to the emperor, saying the crown prince had severely disrupted classroom order. In all his years, the old man had never seen such a deranged crown prince. During cultural lessons, Yu presented his painstakingly crafted works, a book titled Virtues of Men and another called Ways of Women, indoctrinating his younger brothers with the idea that a man without talent is virtuous. In archery and horsemanship classes, he snatched the princess's needles and threads from next door, teaching his brothers embroidery, cooking, and braiding their steeds' manes. The princes excitedly went to the kitchen to wash their hands and prepare soup. When a few dishes were served, 3 of them collapsed, causing a sensation throughout the imperial hospital. So what was our princess doing at this time? We were riding on battle horses with braided manes, being chased wildly by Yu, who cracked his whip. Anyone who lagged behind got a lash. That madman Yu was still shouting passionately behind us, Quanxing, your mother is a wild one, run, live a life undefined by norms, this is insane. I merely sighed to him, Mom, life is a vast wilderness. And Yu immediately started chasing me like I was some wild horse. On the training grounds, the princesses charged like wild bulls, galloping at full speed, while under the shade of the trees on the other side, the princes quietly threaded needles, enjoying a peaceful moment. I really love the emperor's one-word response. The emperor decided to give Yu something to do. He called Yu before him and said kindly, Your Xiaoxi has reached the age for marriage. The imperial consort and I have decided to entrust you with the task of selecting her groom. You won't disappoint us, will you? Yu was taken aback. Of course, father, just wait for my bad news. Yin Yu threw himself into the task of selecting a husband for me with great enthusiasm. That very day, he rounded up all the unmarried sons of officials in the capital aged between 16 and 30 and threw them into prison. On the first day, he released a batch whose mothers were still alive, fearing that I might be bullied by my mother-in-law after marriage. On the second day, he released another batch who had concubines or maidservants, coldly reprimanding them. Chastity is a man's best dowry. Next is appearance. A mole on the nose suggests a tendency to cheat after marriage. Swipe left. Scholarship. Failed the imperial examination 3 times. Utterly useless. Dismissed. Character. Littering everywhere. No public morality. Rejected. Family background. Only 2 dilapidated thatched huts at home. Marrying into such hardship. I swipe. In the end, Yin Yu stood alone in the prison, realizing that he had unknowingly released everyone. Yin Yu didn't reflect on whether his standards were too high, he simply thought these aristocratic youths were too spoiled, so he turned his attention to the common folk. For a time, every man in the capital who considered himself handsome grew nervous, even Wang Ermotzi, the pastry seller at the alley entrance, worried he might be chosen. That day, while chatting with Yin Lang in the tea house, I encountered Yin Yu scouring the streets for young men. He sat down across from me and asked gloomily, "Have all the good men in this world died out?" Yin Lang subtly reminded him, "Your Highness, isn't there still one who meets all the criteria?" Where, far away in the horizon, yet right before your eyes, Yin Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. I thought he had finally come to his senses, but to my surprise, his gaze went right past me and fixed on someone behind me. The new top scholar, Lu Mingxi. "Yes, he indeed meets all the criteria, let's go with him." Yin Lang's expression changed abruptly. "What, Your Highness, perhaps you should reconsider. Young Master Lu isn't suitable." "How is he not suitable? I find him perfectly suitable." "The matter is settled." Yin Yu immediately stood up and walked towards Lu Mingxi's side. Yin Lang rushed over, grabbing my shoulders and shaking me violently. "Quick, say you two aren't suited for each other, or I'll beat you up." "Don't worry. How could I ever steal a man my sister has her eyes on?" Before I could finish my sentence, I didn't catch what Yin Yu said to Lu Mingxi, but he turned around and gave me a gentle smile, his eyes captivating. "Actually, it might not be such a bad idea," I said, my judgment clouded by infatuation. It just so happened that the Lantern Festival was in a few days, and Lu Mingxi and I had agreed to go out to see the lanterns. The streets were filled with bustling crowds and dazzling lights, and we were having a wonderful conversation, but as we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following us. Since childhood, my sixth sense has always been accurate. I could easily tell whether someone's gaze held kindness or malice. This time was no exception. The stalker was well hidden, and with the streets packed with young men and women carrying lanterns and wearing masks, it was impossible to pinpoint who was following us. But I noticed that whenever I got close to Lu Mingxi, that gaze would become unusually intense. When I deliberately stood on tiptoe to put a mask on Lu Mingxi, I felt a phantom pain on my back, a burning sting this time. It was definitely Yin Lang. I looked around. Ahead was a massive lantern tree, flanked by small vendors, next to acrobats and lion dancers. None of the passers-by resembled Yin Lang. Could she possibly be hiding inside the lantern tree? I quietly told Lu Mingxi that Yin Lang was following us and asked him to help put on an act. Lu Mingxi said, "Your Highness Yushi, I don't think Missy is that kind of person. How could she possibly be following us?" The lion dance performers started leaping around wildly as if possessed. Without changing my expression, I pulled Lu Mingxi along and pretended to be angry. "You have no idea, Yin Lang is exactly that kind of person. When we were kids, she kept stealing my dried fish snacks. If I didn't give them to her, she'd hit me. Just the other day, she even pinched me." No one answered. A sudden idea struck me. "Do you know why I couldn't beat her when we were kids?" Because Yin Lang was the chubbiest kid on our street. She weighed 60 pounds by the time she was 7, 59 Jin and 8 Liang. A shrill voice suddenly came from the lion head next to us. Both Lu Mingxi and I fell silent. Yin Lang took off the enormous lion head and threw it to the ground, angrily saying, "So what if I took a few of your dried fish snacks? Was that really necessary? I'm never talking to you again." She stormed off, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I walked over to the side and bought a stick of candied hawthorns, took a bite of one, then handed it to Lu Mingxi with a smile. "Finally, she's gone, you can have the rest." The old man selling the candied hawthorns crossed his arms and gave us a once-over, sneering. "You all look decent enough, yet you can't even afford 2 sticks of candied hawthorns." Lu Mingxi was about to take it but immediately declined politely upon hearing this. "Your Highness, this is improper." I held the candied hawthorn to his lips and said nonchalantly, "What's the big deal? You're the crown prince's chosen consort for me. What's wrong with sharing a stick of candied hawthorns?" I even deliberately rolled my eyes at the old man. But he suddenly fell silent. Lu Mingxi lowered her head to eat, when the old man abruptly said, "You two are such a perfect match, talented man and beautiful woman. Even an old man like me can see how well suited you are. Why don't you give each other a kiss?" I was so infuriated by the old man that I stormed off, leaving the remaining candied hawthorns for her to eat alone. Strangely, even though Yin Lang had already left, I still felt as if needles were pricking my back, an unbearable itch all over. Could it be that the stalker was someone else? No matter where I went, that gaze followed me. In the end, I simply boarded a small boat with Lu Mingxi, drifting on the lake, thinking, surely they can't follow us now, gazing at the lake scenery. Lu Mingxi was lost in thought inside. The vast lake waters, in spring, ripple with green waves. I clung to the bow of the boat for a long time but couldn't come up with a single line of poetry. All I could do was scratch my head and say, "It really is green." In The Chaste Widow and the Handsome Scholar, as soon as Widow Chen's husband drowned, she went boating with Scholar Su. The boatman said, "Love without a common language is like a handful of loose sand. It doesn't even need a breeze to scatter, just a few steps and it falls apart." Lu Mingxi, however, smiled faintly. "Your Highness has read this book, you've read it too." Modesty aside, it happens to be my humble work. I got excited all of a sudden and was about to hold Lu Mingxi's hand to express my admiration for the author. The boatman, "Oh, come on, it's just someone who writes smut, damn it. Why does a boatman talk so much?" I glared at the boatman. "You're the only one who can talk. Just row your boat." The boatman lowered his head and rowed with a clatter, swinging the oars like wheels of fire. The boat rocked violently, and I almost lost my balance. Lu Mingxi steadied me, and I took the opportunity to lean into him. "Young Master Lu, I feel a bit dizzy." The boatman rolled his eyes and mimicked me in a mocking tone. "Young Master Lu, I feel a bit dizzy." I couldn't hold back any longer and pointed at the boatman, saying to Lu Mingxi, "Go on, give him a couple of slaps." The boatman, "Be reasonable." Lu Mingxi frowned and stepped forward. "His Highness has no grudge against you, yet you go too far." Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly froze, staring blankly at the boatman's face. After a few seconds, he abruptly turned around and declared with righteous indignation, "Your Highness, he's right, you truly need a dose of reason." "Me," I said, "I'm not Wu Zetian, why would I need a Li Ji?" I don't quite understand why Lu Mingxi's attitude towards me changed so drastically after just one glance at the boatman. From the moment we left the house until now, I haven't even held Lu Mingxi's hand. I've been followed by Yin Lang, mocked by the candied hawthorn seller, and even a boatman's mouth is so foul. Could it be that Lu Mingxi and I are truly incompatible? I tugged at Lu Mingxi's sleeve and sat down, intending to lean on his shoulder, pretending to be dizzy. When suddenly a cold voice came from the bow of the boat. "A man without self-respect is like a cabbage." Lu Mingxi immediately sat up straight, leaving me no opportunity to take advantage. I stubbornly tried to touch his hand again, but the boatman said, "A man without restraint will find his backside rotten when he goes out." Lu Mingxi immediately crossed his arms. Looking like a virtuous man being forced into prostitution by me, I was determined to touch his hand today, no matter what. On this rickety boat, I chased, he fled, neither of us could escape. Before I knew it, we reached the bow of the boat. The moment I took Lu Mingxi's hand, the boatman panicked. Upholding male virtue is everyone's responsibility. And then, with a single stroke, he knocked Lu Mingxi right into the lake. Due to inertia, I nearly tumbled into the water as well. Frantically flailing in the air, I managed to grab hold of the boatman's collar in the nick of time. With a loud rip, the boatman's clothes tore in half under my grip. I fell onto the deck and looked up in shock at the 8 pockets lining the boatman's inner garment. Not to be rude, but why do these 8 pockets look so familiar? Even the position, size, and fabric are exactly the same. Lu Mingxi had just managed to climb out of the lake, but the moment he saw those 8 pockets, he immediately jumped back in with a loud plop, and when he took another look at the boatman's unpredictable expression, he realized, wasn't this the same old man who had been selling candied hawthorns earlier? No, this is clearly that bastard Helian Yu. Still clutching the tattered scraps of fabric in my hand, I roared in fury, Helian Yu, are you playing me? Helian Yu wanted to explain but didn't know how to begin, ultimately only managing to say weakly, you know. I've been separated from my mother since childhood. Inside the hall, the drenched Lu Mingxi and the disheveled Helian Yu knelt below, while the emperor and imperial consort sat on the throne above. I stood by the emperor's side, silently shedding tears. This is a method I've developed since childhood. Every time someone bullied me, when I went to complain, I would just point at the culprit without saying a word, and 2 clear tears would roll down after being pointed at. The person would get beaten half to death by their parents and still feel like they truly deserved it, never daring to bully me again, except for Yin Lang. This trick has always worked flawlessly. Helian Yu now felt deeply guilty and said to the emperor, "Old man, let me explain first." The emperor said to my mother, "Rong, there must be more to this matter. Why don't we hear what the crown prince has to say first?" My mother flew into a rage, slamming the table. "Helian Dang. Your son ruined my daughter's marriage prospects. What explanation could there possibly be?" Helian Yu calmly replied, "Aunt Rong, it's like this. I heard that little Shi and young Master Lu were going to the Lantern Festival. Worried that young Master Lu might take advantage of her, I followed them the whole way, disguising myself as a lantern tree, a street vendor, a boatman." I shrieked, "You even disguised yourself as a lantern tree?" Helian Yu, that's not the point. The point is, I saw Lu Mingxi daring to share the same candied hawthorn stick with Xiaoxi. Is that normal? Lu Mingxi showed a guilty expression. "Your Highness, it's indeed." I pushed him away. "Helian Yu, when you ate the leftover strawberry butts and watermelon rinds from me, why didn't you ask if that was normal?" Lu Mingxi, that's not normal. Helian Yu, who asked for your opinion, father? Lu Mingxi even tried to take advantage of little Shi while she was seasick. He deserves to die 1,000 deaths. Lu Mingxi, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. Me, totally innocent. I didn't get anything at all. Both Lu Mingxi and Helian Yu instantly glared at me with fury. I cleared my throat dryly. "Helian Yu, you hold me every night and coax me to sleep. Taking advantage of me, shouldn't you die too?" Lu Mingxi widened his eyes, staring at Helian Yu in disbelief. You too, be reasonable." I merely held her and did nothing else. Lu Mingxi couldn't be reasonable. Muttering "spring brings green waves," he walked away, utterly dejected. The emperor and my mother each called us over to question us. "How come you've done nothing? Are you incapable?" How could I be incapable? I'm more than capable. That night, I took advantage of my drowsiness to rest my head on his chest, only to hear his heavy breathing as he struggled to say, "Baby, you're such a little pig." The ambiguous atmosphere vanished in an instant. I got so angry that I punched him in the chest. And he said, "My heart feels soft." I kicked him, and he said, spoiling me. Even when I occasionally woke up startled in the middle of the night, I could see his gentle profile under the moonlight as he mended my clothes, making my wound feel cold. At that moment, I heard Helian Yu's righteous voice from the other side. "Father, Xiaoxi is my sister. How could I possibly do such a beastly thing to her? I reckon Helian Yu won't come to his senses even after I die." That night, Helian Yu, as usual, coaxed me to sleep, holding Lu Mingxi's freshly published masterpiece, Green Waves Chronicles, "Brother, be gentle," in his hands. His expression grew solemn, his clear voice became increasingly serious as he read, and the more I listened, the more something felt off. Does the plot of this book sound somewhat familiar? The female lead, Lu Bo, is the male lead's stepsister. Lu Bo is innocent and adorable, but the male lead harbors ulterior motives towards his stepsister, coaxing her to share his bed, and even goes so far as to slip an aphrodisiac into Lu Bo's tea. Helian Yu didn't finish reading before angrily throwing the book down. "Nonsense, that bastard Lu Mingxi dares to write a book slandering us." "Exactly. What's this about drugging? How could such a thing ever happen?" I patted him and handed him a cup of tea to calm him down. Helian Yu drank it in one gulp without even looking, then picked up the book again. I must see what else he wrote, of course. It was something unfit for publication. That day, she asked me to visit my uncle's house. When I returned, I learned that the emperor had forcibly taken her into the palace, and she was immediately made a noble consort. He frowned, undoing the first button at his collar, and asked me, "Xiaoxi, don't you think something's off?" "Something is indeed off. This medicine is way too effective." I lunged forward to help him undo more buttons. "Brother, are you feeling hot? If you're hot, Just take it off. Here, let me help you. Yu instinctively grabbed my hand. No, we haven't finished reading yet. What's so good about this damn book? Let go. I'll undo your belt. No, Shaoxi, it'll spoil. Yu's protests gradually faded. While I panicked and reached for that tattered book. Wait, that's not how it's written in the book. Can't you pamper me a bit gentler? Half asleep. I suddenly remembered Yu's repeated murmurs about it'll spoil and drowsily asked him, "What did you say would spoil just now?" Yu looked down at me deeply. Maternal love can turn corrupt. What a lunatic. The next morning, I got up aching all over, only to hear Lu Mingxi arriving upon hearing the news and publicly scolding him. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, how could you do such a beastly thing to your own sister?" After a long silence, Yu said, "Anyone who dares to openly criticize my faults shall be dragged out and executed." The emperor, upon hearing this, happily patted his belly and immediately arranged our marriage. I was in high spirits all day. After months of scheming, the deed was finally done. Yu was now mine, and I could live in the palace, never to be separated from my mother again. I left the palace to share the good news with Yin Lang, only to return and find that the damned emperor had abdicated. Yu had ascended the throne, and the damned emperor had run off to Jiangnan with my mother for a leisurely trip. As Yu, clad in a dragon robe with 8 pockets, slowly approached me, my vision darkened. With a trembling voice, I asked, can maternal love still be restored? Yu raised an eyebrow. What do you think? The end.